In the grim darkness of the far future, identity is everything. A Space Marine's name is not just a sound, it is a weapon, a lineage, a sacred link to a chapter that has endured for 10,000 years of endless war. It is spoken in battle, carved into armor, remembered in litanies of honor. But there exists a brotherhood within the Imperium where that name is silenced, locked away, never to be spoken aloud again. A place where a Space Marine does not fight for glory, nor for remembrance, but for secrets so dangerous that merely surviving them becomes a curse. This is the Deathwatch. Most in the Imperium believe the Deathwatch to be elite hunters, specialists called upon when Xenos threats grow too vast or too strange for conventional forces. That belief is not wrong, but it is incomplete. The truth is far darker. The Deathwatch is not simply an organization. It is a sentence, a quiet, unrecorded judgment passed upon warriors who are strong enough to endure horrors that would shatter entire chapters, and then live with the knowledge afterward. A Space Marine joins his chapter knowing one truth above all others: he will die in service, remembered as a hero. The Deathwatch offers no such certainty. Those who walk its halls fight wars that are never written into Imperial records, battles erased before the blood even dries. Victories that cannot be celebrated. Sacrifices that must never be known. To serve the Deathwatch is to accept that survival itself may be the greatest punishment of all. Imagine standing in a silent chamber of black stone, surrounded by warriors who wear fragments of different heraldry: ultramarine blue beside space wolf gray, black Templar black beside Raven Guard shadow. Each bears the same silver arm, cold and unadorned, marking them not as brothers but as tools. No banners fly here, no chapter symbols are honored. The past is deliberately obscured, because the past is a weakness the Deathwatch cannot afford. Here, loyalty is rewritten. A Space Marine is taught to place duty above brotherhood, obedience above tradition, silence above truth. He is shown enemies the Imperium insists do not exist, creatures too ancient, too intelligent, or too corrupting to be acknowledged. He learns that the galaxy is not merely hostile, but actively watching, waiting for humanity to slip, to question, to hesitate. And once he sees that truth, there is no path back to ignorance. The twisted life of the Deathwatch begins not with battle, but with realization. The understanding that the Imperium survives not because it is righteous, but because some warriors are willing to become something monstrous in its name. The Deathwatch does not ask if a Space Marine is brave enough to fight. It asks a far more terrible question. Every Space Marine is forged to believe that his chapter is eternal. It is his father, his brothers, his past, and his future bound into one unbreakable truth. From the moment he earns his armor, his identity is no longer his own, it belongs to the chapter. Its victories are his victories. Its shame is his burden. And yet, for those chosen by the Deathwatch, that certainty ends without ceremony. There is no dramatic farewell. No great speech spoken before assembled brothers. The summons comes quietly, often without warning, delivered by agents who do not explain themselves and do not answer questions. One moment, a Space Marine is preparing for another campaign alongside those he has bled with for decades. The next, he is standing alone, ordered to leave everything familiar behind. His chapter master does not argue. His brothers do not object. Because everyone understands what the summons truly means. Refusal is not an option, and return is never guaranteed. The journey away from the chapter is often the longest a space Marine will ever endure, not in distance, but in silence. The familiar colors of his armor are stripped away, replaced by black that swallows identity and reflection alike. Only one piece remains unchanged: the heraldry of his chapter, preserved on a single shoulder pad like a relic from another life. It is not worn with pride. It is worn as a reminder of what he no longer fully belongs to. This is the first fracture. The moment when a Space Marine realizes that honor can be demanded, not earned. That loyalty can be reassigned. That he is no longer a son of a single legacy, but property of a cause too secret to name. Many believe this separation is temporary, that service in the Deathwatch is merely another duty, another campaign to endure before returning home wiser, stronger, more respected. That belief does not survive long. Because the Deathwatch does not want champions. It wants survivors. Warriors capable of standing apart from their own traditions, willing to question the methods of their ancestors, and ruthless enough to abandon sentiment when sentiment becomes a liability. Those who cling too tightly to their old ways rarely last. Those who adapt too quickly often lose something far worse than their past. As the Deathwatch gathers its chosen, something subtle but irreversible begins to happen. The Space Marine stops thinking of his chapter as us, and starts thinking of it as them. Not out of betrayal, but necessity. Distance reshapes loyalty. Silence reshapes memory. And slowly, painfully, the idea of returning home begins to feel less like a promise, and more like a lie told to make obedience easier. If you stay until the very end of this story, you will discover what truly happens to those who believe they can walk away from the Deathwatch unchanged, and why the Imperium needs them to believe that lie for as long as possible. Because being taken from your chapter is not the sacrifice. It is only the beginning. The moment a Space Marine enters the domain of the Deathwatch, he learns a truth that no amount of combat training could have prepared him for. Power in the Imperium does not always come from weapons. Sometimes, it comes from silence. Before a single mission is assigned, before a single enemy is named, the warrior is brought before an oath unlike any he has ever sworn, an oath that does not elevate him, but erases him. This oath is not spoken publicly. There are no witnesses beyond those who have already been consumed by it. The words are precise, ancient, and absolute. They bind the Space Marine not only to the Deathwatch, but to the Inquisition itself, a force that answers to no one and forgives nothing. With each line spoken, pieces of the warrior's former life are stripped away. His name is sealed. His past deeds are locked behind layers of secrecy. His future becomes conditional, dependent not on honor, but on usefulness. In this moment, the Deathwatch reveals its true nature. It is not a brotherhood formed by trust, but by control. Knowledge is rationed carefully, parceled out only when necessary, and taken away just as easily. The Space Marine is taught that survival is no longer the highest virtue, obedience is. To question an order is to invite scrutiny. To hesitate is to invite suspicion. And suspicion, within the Deathwatch, is often a death sentence delivered quietly and without record. The oath does something else, something far more dangerous. It rewires loyalty. A Space Marine is conditioned to believe that the Imperium must be protected at all costs, but the Deathwatch teaches him that the Imperium cannot always be protected by truth. Some enemies are so corrosive that knowing they exist is enough to doom entire worlds. Others are so deeply entangled with humanity that destroying them requires acts that would be considered heresy if spoken aloud. From this point forward, the Space Marine is not just a weapon. He is a vault. Watch fortresses become his new home, fortified sanctuaries of black stone and iron discipline, hidden far from the light of Imperial propaganda. Here, rank is fluid, trust is earned through survival, and punishment is swift. Veterans who have served centuries in the Deathwatch speak little, if at all. Their armor bears marks not of honor, but of restraint, symbols removed, inscriptions filed away, histories deliberately forgotten. These are warriors who have seen too much and lived long enough to understand the cost. And it is here, beneath layers of secrecy and ritual, that a Space Marine begins to realize the true weight of the oath he has sworn. He is no longer fighting to be remembered. He is fighting to ensure that others never know what he has seen. His silence is no longer personal, it is strategic. His life is no longer his own, it is classified. The Deathwatch does not ask its warriors to die for the Imperium. It asks them to live, carrying truths that will never be forgiven. The Deathwatch does not build unity through shared history. It forges it through necessity. Within its ranks, warriors stand shoulder to shoulder who, under any other circumstances, would never have fought together, perhaps would never have trusted one another at all. Old rivalries, doctrinal hatred, and cultural contempt are not erased when a Space Marine joins the Deathwatch. They are weaponized. Kill teams are formed not by comfort but by contradiction. A space wolf who values instinct and tradition is placed beside an ultramarine whose every action is governed by rigid doctrine. A Black Templar, burning with zealous certainty, fights alongside a Raven Guard who believes silence and subterfuge are superior to open confrontation. Each warrior arrives believing his chapter's way is the correct way. The Deathwatch exists to break that belief. At first, cooperation is shallow and mechanical. Orders are followed, targets are eliminated, but trust is withheld. Every word is measured, every pause is evaluated. In the Deathwatch, a careless sentence can be as dangerous as a missed shot. The presence of the Inquisition lingers constantly, unseen, but always felt. Any warrior could be an observer. Any confession could be recorded. The line between brother and liability blurs until it disappears entirely. Combat accelerates this tension. Deathwatch missions do not allow room for disagreement. Decisions must be made instantly, often with incomplete information and catastrophic consequences. When survival depends on another warrior's judgment, old prejudices are forced into the open. Sometimes they are shattered, sometimes they are confirmed in the worst possible way. A single failure can condemn an entire kill team, and the blame is never shared equally. Over time, something colder replaces brotherhood. A form of trust born not from affection, but from proven lethality. A warrior does not trust his kill team because he likes them, he trusts them because they have not failed him yet. This is a fragile bond, maintained by discipline and fear rather than loyalty. It works, but it leaves scars deeper than any blade. And yet, in rare moments between deployments, something unsettling emerges. A quiet understanding, a shared recognition that no one else in the galaxy truly understands what they have endured. These fleeting moments never become friendship. The Deathwatch does not allow that luxury. But they become something else, an unspoken pact between survivors who know that if they fall, their deaths will be unmarked, their names unspoken, their sacrifices swallowed by silence. This is the twisted brotherhood of the Deathwatch. Not forged by love, not preserved by honor, but held together by the simple, brutal fact that alone, none of them would survive. The Deathwatch is not deployed against ordinary threats. It is unleashed when the Imperium encounters something it cannot categorize, cannot control, or cannot afford to acknowledge. These wars are not announced. They are not celebrated. They are erased. And those who fight them are expected to return with fewer questions than when they left, an expectation that is almost never fulfilled. Unlike conventional Space Marine campaigns, Deathwatch operations begin with fragments of truth. Intelligence deliberately incomplete, briefings stripped of context, not because the Inquisition is careless, but because full knowledge has destroyed warriors before. The Deathwatch learns quickly that the galaxy hides far more than it reveals, and that some Xenos entities are not merely hostile, but conceptually dangerous. Creatures that manipulate belief, species that infect culture rather than flesh, enemies that win not by killing worlds, but by changing them. On these missions, there are no battle lines, no clear victories. Kill teams strike deep, often alone, cutting out threats before they can fully manifest. Sometimes they arrive too late. Sometimes they succeed only by committing acts that would be considered unforgivable under any other command. Entire populations are silenced. Technologies are obliterated. Evidence is burned alongside the dead. And when the mission ends, there is no triumph, only a report sealed behind layers of authorization that most of the Imperium will never even know exists. It is here that the psychological cost becomes unavoidable. Space Marines are engineered to fight, but not to question the meaning of survival. The Deathwatch forces them to do both. Veterans begin to recognize patterns, signs that a threat was not meant to be eradicated, only delayed. That some wars are cyclical. That the Imperium is not winning, merely enduring. This realization corrodes certainty faster than any Xenos weapon. Some warriors cope by becoming brutally efficient. They strip emotion from action and reduce every life to a calculation. Others fracture more quietly. They hesitate. They pause. They start to remember the faces of those they were ordered to erase. The Deathwatch does not punish this immediately, but it watches. Always watching. Because hesitation, in these wars, spreads faster than fear. The most dangerous truth learned in these campaigns is not about the enemy. It is about the Imperium itself. The Deathwatch exists because the Imperium cannot face what it has already lost. It fights not to reclaim hope, but to prevent despair from becoming visible. Every unknowable enemy destroyed leaves behind a question that cannot be answered, and every answer denied pushes the burden onto the shoulders of those sworn to silence. And so the war continues, not against a single foe, but against the very idea that the galaxy can ever truly be understood. At a certain point in the Deathwatch, battle ceases to be the most dangerous part of service. The real danger lies in accumulation, in the slow, relentless gathering of forbidden knowledge. Every mission leaves behind fragments of understanding, and together they form a picture the Imperium was never meant to see. The Deathwatch is not merely a weapon aimed outward. It is a barrier built inward, designed to stop reality from reaching the masses. Space Marines in the Deathwatch learn that some victories are indistinguishable from defeats. A Xenos empire destroyed may have been holding back something worse. A forbidden technology eliminated might have been humanity's last chance at survival. These are not questions a warrior is allowed to ask, but they are impossible to forget once they appear. The Deathwatch does not exist to find answers. It exists to bury them. There are operations that never involve combat at all. Kill teams are deployed to cleanse archives, execute scholars, and erase entire branches of knowledge deemed too destabilizing. Worlds are quarantined not for what they have done, but for what they have learned. Civilization itself becomes the battlefield, and the Deathwatch becomes the blade that cuts history apart before it can spread. This is where the line between protector and executioner finally collapses. The Space Marine, once created to defend humanity, is now tasked with destroying fragments of it to ensure the whole survives. Entire cultures vanish without record. Their existence reduced to a classification code, sealed and forgotten. And the warrior who carried out the order must live with the certainty that he has saved billions, by condemning millions. Not all Deathwatch Marines endure this burden equally. Some accept it with cold resolve, convincing themselves that mercy is a weakness the Imperium can no longer afford. Others fracture internally, trapped between indoctrination and conscience. These warriors become dangerous, not because they rebel, but because they think. And thought, in the Deathwatch, is the first step toward heresy. The Inquisition is acutely aware of this risk. Surveillance intensifies. Tests become more subtle. Transfers happen without explanation. Some warriors are quietly removed from kill teams, reassigned to roles where their knowledge can be monitored, or contained. A few are never reassigned at all. Their absence is not discussed. Their names, already sealed, disappear completely. This is the hidden truth of the Deathwatch. It does not just eliminate threats to the Imperium. It eliminates the possibility that the Imperium might ever truly understand itself. Not every Deathwatch Space Marine falls in battle. In fact, many of the most valuable warriors live far longer than they ever would have within their original chapters. But longevity in the Deathwatch is not a reward, it is a warning sign. The longer a Marine serves, the more he knows, and the heavier his silence becomes. Eventually, survival itself marks him as a problem. Some are deemed unfit to return home. Officially, this is framed as necessity. Their knowledge is too extensive, their experience is too destabilizing to be reintegrated into a chapter that still believes in tradition and honor. And officially, it is a quiet exile. These warriors are reassigned permanently, bound to the Deathwatch for the remainder of their existence. They become trainers, wardens, watchers of others who will one day walk the same path. Their armor grows more worn, their speech more restrained, their presence heavier with unspoken history. Others are not given even that fate. The Deathwatch has protocols for containment, procedures never written in any codex, enacted only when a warrior has seen something that cannot be allowed to persist. These are not punishments, they are corrections. The Imperium cannot afford unstable guardians of its darkest truths. When such a Marine disappears, there is no record, no explanation, no acknowledgement. He simply never existed. Then there are those who are allowed to return to their chapters. These are the most tragic of all. They come back changed, burdened with knowledge they are forbidden to share, wearing a single silver pauldron is the only proof of what they endured. Their brothers see the honor but not the cost. Questions are asked carefully. Answers are given vaguely. Over time, distance grows. The returned warrior is respected, but never fully understood. Many of these Marines request to rejoin the Deathwatch voluntarily. They claim duty. They claim purpose. The truth is, simpler. Home no longer feels real. After witnessing the hidden wars of the galaxy, the rituals and certainties of a chapter feel hollow. The Deathwatch has stripped something from them that cannot be restored, the ability to believe without doubt. This is why so many never truly return. Because the Deathwatch does not just change where a Space Marine fights. It changes where he belongs. The missions of the Deathwatch are rarely straightforward. They demand decisions that no other warriors would be asked to make, choices that blur the line between loyalty and betrayal. Kill teams are often sent into situations where every possible outcome carries catastrophic consequences, where the enemy cannot be defeated without destroying something innocent, or where failure could doom entire sectors. In these moments, a Space Marine realizes that the concept of right and wrong is no longer clear, only survival, duty, and secrecy. Sometimes, the choice is between brothers. In these missions, trust becomes the deadliest weapon. Kill teams must rely on each other completely, yet each warrior knows that one mistake, or one question too many, could lead to ruin. Secrets are exchanged silently. Orders are followed without hesitation. Yet every Marine carries a private awareness. The mission may demand that his loyalty to the team be secondary to the broader survival of the Imperium. The ultimate betrayal may come not from a rival or an enemy, but from within. There are instances where failure is not permitted, and victory requires unspeakable acts. Entire Xenos worlds may be purged not only for the threat they pose, but to prevent knowledge from spreading. Allies may be sacrificed to save humanity in secret, leaving the warrior haunted by the cost of obedience. Every successful mission leaves behind ghosts, both real and psychological, that the Deathwatch refuses to acknowledge. The organization does not celebrate triumphs. It documents efficiency. This is the crucible in which the Deathwatch truly forges its members. By the time a Marine has faced the unthinkable, he has come to understand a terrifying truth: survival itself can be betrayal. But failure is worse. To falter is to doom the Imperium. To hesitate is to condemn billions. And so the Deathwatch Marines continue, carrying burdens heavier than any weapon could measure, fighting wars that must never be spoken of, making decisions that must never be understood. Because in the Deathwatch, loyalty is never simple, honor is never safe, and the line between hero and betrayer does not exist. It has been erased long before the battle begins. Every Deathwatch mission builds toward inevitability, a point where preparation, secrecy, and skill collide with raw, uncompromising chaos. Kill teams are deployed against enemies that defy understanding, across war zones where logic bends and hope is a fragile illusion. And one day, inevitably, something goes wrong. Not a tactical error, not a failure of arms, but the kind of catastrophe that tests the limits of loyalty, humanity, and survival itself. In that instant, every choice the Deathwatch Marine has ever made becomes weighty, every suppressed fear erupts with unbearable clarity. Kill teams that have survived impossible odds find themselves trapped, facing enemies not only unknown but incomprehensible. The instruments of war, the bolters, the power armor, the combat knowledge honed over centuries, begin to feel insufficient. The lines between friend and foe, order and chaos, success and failure blur. And in this maelstrom, the true cost of service becomes undeniable. Some make impossible decisions in a heartbeat, sacrifice one for many, strike before thinking, betray instinct for obedience. Others hesitate, paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of what is demanded of them. In these moments, the Deathwatch ceases to be an organization of warriors and becomes a crucible of human, or superhuman, frailty. Every hesitation can trigger the downfall of the mission. Every act of courage carries consequences unseen. The galaxy itself seems to watch silently, indifferent yet aware. When the dust settles, victory, if it can be called that, comes at a staggering price. Killed teams survive, but only partially. Marines who return are not the same beings who left. Some are scarred beyond recognition, mentally and physically. Others are hollowed out, carrying knowledge so terrible that it cannot be shared. Entire squads are reduced to ghosts of themselves, yet they continue to fight, because the Imperium demands it, and because they understand that stopping is not an option. The Deathwatch succeeds. The Imperium is protected. But at what cost? Every operation leaves behind survivors who are irrevocably changed, whose lives are no longer their own, whose existence is defined by secrets and sacrifices the galaxy will never acknowledge. In that shattering moment, the true nature of the Deathwatch becomes clear. They are not heroes. They are instruments. They are the price humanity pays for survival, and their suffering is the Imperium's unspoken debt. In the aftermath, silence reigns. The ones who remain speak little, for words are dangerous and memories are heavy. The galaxy continues on, oblivious to the wars fought in the shadows. And the Deathwatch waits, knowing that the next unimaginable threat will come, and that when it does, they will be ready, because they have no choice. Their lives are twisted, their sacrifices invisible, their existence a perpetual crucible of loyalty and horror. And yet, they endure. Because endurance is all they have left. When a Deathwatch mission ends, the world often moves on as if nothing happened. Planets rebuild, populations recover, history is rewritten, but the Marines who lived through it carry the unrecorded truth in their bones. Those who survive do not come home as heroes. They return as shadows, fragments of the warriors they once were, burdened with memories that cannot be shared and experiences that cannot be understood. Every conversation, every gathering with their original chapter, is a subtle reminder that they no longer fully belong. Some attempt to reintegrate, clinging to the rituals and customs that once defined them. They join chapter assemblies, participate in litanies, and wear their old heraldry, but it is hollow now, a mask that fails to conceal the fissures within. The loyalty that once bound them to their brothers has been rewritten. The bond is no longer of shared triumph, but of survival under unimaginable pressure. Trust, friendship, even pride, they are luxuries that the Deathwatch has removed. These Marines become living testaments to what secrecy and duty demand. Others vanish entirely, reassigned to roles within the Deathwatch that remove them from their chapters forever. They remain in the shadows, carrying knowledge of threats and events that cannot reach the ears of the Imperium. Some take comfort in the clarity of purpose, others descend into quiet madness, haunted by the faces of worlds erased and lives extinguished in service to a cause that never names them. There is no closure, no ceremony, no acknowledgement of what has been endured. The universe does not pause for grief. And yet, life in the Deathwatch continues. New warriors arrive, fresh from their chapters, unaware of the psychological toll that awaits them. They are trained, conditioned, and bound to oaths that strip away identity. The cycle begins again, as it has for centuries, because the galaxy's horrors do not cease, and someone must face them. Those who have survived become guides, instructors, and silent reminders of the cost of this unrelenting duty. Their existence is both shield and warning. In the end, the Deathwatch is defined not by the victories it achieves, but by the lives it reshapes. The Imperium remains intact, the Xenos threats subdued, and the galaxy largely unaware. But for those who have served, the scars are permanent. They carry truths that no one else may ever know, and in that knowledge lies both power and eternal isolation. Their sacrifices are invisible, yet their endurance is the thin line between order and chaos. For the Deathwatch, there is no homecoming. There is only service, silence, and survival, and the understanding that the galaxy's safety comes at a price that can never be repaid. Even after centuries of unrecorded battles, impossible missions, and unimaginable horrors, the Deathwatch endures. It is a constant, unyielding presence at the edge of human understanding, a shadow force that exists because the Imperium demands it and because the galaxy itself is too dangerous to be left unguarded. The warriors of the Deathwatch are no longer simply space marines. They are custodians of secrets, bearers of truths too volatile to be known, and enforcers of a vigilance the rest of humanity cannot comprehend. The cycle continues without pause. Fresh recruits arrive, selected from chapters across the galaxy for their skill, their resilience, and their willingness to sacrifice everything, including identity, for the safety of countless worlds. They do not arrive with fanfare or recognition. They arrive with a summons, a mandate, and the unspoken understanding that once chosen, they are never the same again. Each new Marine becomes another link in a chain forged of silence, secrecy, and duty, a chain that binds the galaxy's survival to the endurance of a few. Within the Deathwatch, history is both preserved and obliterated. Battles are fought, enemies destroyed, and secrets contained, yet no record is made for the broader Imperium. Victory is never lauded, failure is never acknowledged. The lives of these warriors are a paradox. They protect humanity in ways no one can see, yet they are themselves invisible, forgotten by the chapters that created them and unrecognized by the Imperium that depends on them. Their suffering is unseen, but it is profound. Their endurance is absolute. And still, the questions remain. What happens to the men who endure this endless cycle? How many lose themselves entirely in the service of secrets they cannot speak? How many quietly vanish, consumed by the weight of knowledge and duty? For the galaxy, these questions need not be answered. For the Deathwatch, they are the very reason to exist. In the end, the Deathwatch is eternal, a silent testament to the price of survival and the burden of truth. They are neither celebrated nor mourned. They are not heroes in the conventional sense, nor are they villains. They are something far more essential, an invisible line drawn between humanity and the horrors that would consume it. The galaxy continues to turn, worlds rise and fall, and enemies remain, yet the watch persists. They endure because they must, because the Imperium cannot afford for them not to, and because in the shadows, the galaxy's safety depends on warriors who are willing to become more than men. The Deathwatch will always exist. And they will never, ever rest. The true horror of the Deathwatch is not the enemies they face, nor the battles they fight, it is the permanence of their own erasure. Chapters forget them. Worlds never hear their names. Even history itself leaves no trace of the warriors who have sacrificed everything in service to a galaxy that cannot acknowledge their deeds. Every mission completed, every Xenos threat neutralized, vanishes into secrecy, leaving the Marines to bear the weight alone. Their legacy is not written in tomes or honored in song, it exists only in silence and shadows. Each Deathwatch Marine carries a paradox. They are indispensable to the survival of humanity, yet their very success demands they remain invisible. The galaxy survives because they endure, and the Imperium thrives because they suffer. This is the twisted truth that defines their lives. A warrior may return to his chapter, yet find no recognition, no understanding. Even the brotherhood he once held dear cannot fully grasp what has been lost, nor should they. Knowledge of the Deathwatch's full scope is a burden the universe is not ready to bear. This twisted legacy shapes every decision, every action, every thought. It teaches endurance beyond normal comprehension, loyalty beyond emotional connection, and courage that must be measured against secrecy itself. The Deathwatch is not a path to glory, it is a crucible that transforms warriors into instruments of the Imperium's will, sacrificing not only their bodies but the very idea of self. The horrors they face are brutal, but the true cost is existential, the slow erosion of identity, memory, and recognition. And yet, despite this, the Marines endure. They accept the silence, embrace the secrecy, and continue to fight, because they understand that the galaxy's survival depends upon it. They have become more than men, living shields and hidden blades, ever vigilant, ever ready, existing solely to bear the weight of truths that humanity cannot know. Every fallen comrade, every secret mission, every erased world is a testament to their sacrifice, a reminder that their value is measured not in fame or honor, but in the quiet, relentless preservation of human life. In the end, the twisted life of the Deathwatch is a story of paradox. Heroes without recognition, guardians without home, warriors without name. Their existence is defined by silence, their legacy hidden, yet their impact on the Imperium is absolute. They endure not for themselves, nor for glory, but because they alone can shoulder the burden that keeps the galaxy alive. And in this eternal vigilance, they find purpose, and horror, in equal measure. For the Deathwatch, knowledge is both a weapon and a curse. Every mission uncovers truths that could destabilize entire sectors if revealed, secrets about Xenos species, forbidden technologies, and ancient entities whose existence is meant to remain hidden. The burden of such knowledge is not temporary. It clings, infects the mind, and reshapes perception. A Marine may survive battle after battle, but the mental and emotional toll of what he knows is an unending war within himself. The Space Marines of the Deathwatch are trained to compartmentalize, to lock away thoughts that might compromise a mission or endanger humanity. But the mind is not a vault that can be sealed without consequence. Memories of worlds destroyed, lives erased, and atrocities committed in the name of survival cannot be forgotten. They echo in every quiet moment, every pause, every glance at the stars. The warrior becomes haunted by what he knows and what he cannot share. This is the true cost of service, not the wounds that can be healed with medicine, nor the enemies that can be killed with bolt or fire. It is the erosion of the self, the slow transformation from a warrior with identity and loyalty into an instrument of secrecy and fear. Over time, some Marines accept it, embracing the role as both shield and silent executioner. Others falter, their minds fraying under the weight of truths too terrible to hold. Madness is common, and yet, within the Deathwatch, it is treated as a professional hazard rather than a personal tragedy. The burden extends beyond the individual. Entire kill teams can carry the imprint of forbidden knowledge, shaping interactions and decisions long after the mission ends. Even camaraderie is tainted, because every Marine knows the limits of what can be shared. Trust is no longer a given, it is a calculation. Loyalty is measured not by emotion, but by endurance. And in this crucible of secrecy, the line between survival and self-destruction becomes thinner with every passing mission. Yet, despite the cost, the Deathwatch persists. They endure because humanity's survival depends on their ability to carry knowledge that must never see the light of day. They are warriors, scholars of secrecy, and guardians of truths that would unravel the galaxy if spoken aloud. Every thought, every memory, every action is measured against the imperative of secrecy. The price is high: insanity, isolation, and the loss of everything familiar, but without it, the Imperium would not endure. This is the silent contract every Deathwatch Marine accepts, to live with the knowledge that no one else can bear, and to carry it alone for as long as the galaxy demands. In the Deathwatch, silence is not just a discipline, it is a weapon, a shield, and a prison. Every warrior understands that to speak is to endanger not only himself but countless lives across the Imperium. The secrets they carry are not merely dangerous, they are lethal in their revelation. Entire campaigns, hidden from the annals of history, hinge on the ability of these Marines to suppress knowledge that would shatter worlds if exposed. Silence comes at a cost. It isolates. It corrodes trust. Even among fellow Deathwatch Marines, conversations are measured, words are chosen with extreme care, and confessions are rarely spoken aloud. The shared understanding is implicit. Every Marine carries fragments of forbidden truth, and none may reveal them. This creates a strange camaraderie, one built not on friendship, but on the mutual recognition of unbearable burden. They are brothers only in the understanding of what it means to endure. Yet, the human, or superhuman, mind resists indefinite restraint. Memories of fallen comrades, of civilizations purged, of choices made under impossible circumstances, seep into dreams and thoughts. Marines replay moments endlessly, questioning whether the ends truly justified the means. They wrestle with the morality of actions that cannot be judged by any standard other than survival. And in these quiet hours, the weight of silence becomes almost tangible, pressing down like the void of space itself. The Deathwatch teaches its members to live with this pressure, to channel it into efficiency and vigilance. But it cannot remove the cost entirely. For every mission completed, for every enemy eradicated, for every secret buried, a piece of the warrior is lost. They emerge as instruments of the Imperium, honed for effectiveness but diminished in spirit. Loyalty and identity are repurposed. What remains is a mind trained to survive, a body conditioned to fight, and a conscience constantly tested against the impossible. In the end, the burden of silence defines the Deathwatch more than any battlefield. The Marines endure not because they desire glory, nor because they seek honor, but because the galaxy depends on their capacity to hold what no one else can. They exist in the shadows of knowledge, their lives measured by the secrets they keep, their suffering hidden from all who might have understood. And in this endless vigilance, the Deathwatch becomes both protector and prisoner, a line of living silence standing between humanity and horrors that must never be known. For the Deathwatch, there is no conclusion, no final mission, no reward beyond the continuation of duty. Every battle won, every Xenos threat eradicated, every secret preserved is temporary. The galaxy does not pause. It does not heal. And the horrors that lurk beyond Imperial sight do not rest. Each victory is merely the prelude to the next unseen war, the next impossible choice, the next burden that will fall upon the shoulders of those who serve in silence. The Marines who endure are forged into something beyond ordinary comprehension. Their identities are layered with loss, their minds sharpened by secrecy, and their hearts tempered by an unyielding commitment to a cause that cannot recognize them. They do not fight for fame, for glory, or for remembrance. They fight because someone must. They exist because the galaxy depends on it, and because the knowledge they carry ensures that even when worlds crumble, humanity will endure. Every new recruit who arrives is taught the same unspoken truth: service in the Deathwatch is a one-way path. Home, family, even memory may no longer belong to them. They learn to embrace isolation, to accept the weight of forbidden knowledge, and to find purpose in a vigilance that will never end. And those who survive become the guardians of other survivors, carrying the torch of secrecy forward into centuries of unrecorded war. The twisted life of the Deathwatch is eternal. The galaxy thrives because they endure, but their endurance comes at the cost of everything else: identity, companionship, and recognition. They are heroes without honor, warriors without names, and soldiers whose stories are never told. Yet in their silence lies the thin line that separates the Imperium from oblivion, a line drawn and defended by those willing to sacrifice not only their lives but the very essence of who they were. The Deathwatch will continue, silently, unseen, and uncelebrated, as long as threats linger in the darkness and the Imperium requires guardians who can carry the unthinkable.